Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, the government blasting Tel Avivians for holding overnight super spreader party events just ahead of the holiday closures. Meanwhile, new real-world data from Israel showing even better results than expected from the coronavirus vaccine campaign. And finally, no more seafood until further notice. The health ministry imposing strict precautions in the wake of the oil spill in the Mediterranean Sea. It's the eve of Purim in Israel, the annual Jewish holiday typically marked both by prayer services and raucous, drunken, days-long costume parties. And it's precisely with that in mind that a weekend lockdown has been announced. Tel Avivians, however, decided to exploit a simple loophole in that plan. They held the parties last night. Loud music, bright colors, heavily crowded streets, and free-flowing booze. Hundreds celebrating Purim at parties in Tel Aviv's Carmel Market and Rothschild Boulevard Wednesday night. And in any other year, nobody would bat an eye. But of course, this is not a normal year. Critics blasting the partygoers for the flagrant violation of coronavirus guidelines, which was held just one day in advance of the holidays to avoid the scheduled closures. And Health Minister Yuli Edelstein going one step further, saying, quote, "Those who celebrated at the contagion parties need to know. Any spike in morbidity will go down on your name. Businesses will close down because of you, and any human life lost will be on your conscience." Adding, "Wake up, it's not too late." Then adding insult to injury, just as the party was beginning, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was saying this.
בפורים שעבר הייתה התפרצות מסוכנת שהדביקה המונים, ואתם זוכרים שנאלצנו לסגור את המדינה. אסור שזה יחזור על עצמו. בפורים הזה נהפוך הוא. כולנו מצווים לקיים את הכללים. אנחנו יכולים לשמוח, אנחנו יכולים להתחפש, אבל אנחנו חייבים לשמור על הכללים.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister going on to detail a 5-step exit plan for the country to move past the pandemic. The first stage beginning now with vaccines and the green passports. Over 81% of Israelis already vaccinated with at least one dose. Then the second stage being to gradually reopen more education, followed by stage 3, where the green passports gain more privilege. And finally, stages 4 and 5 include vaccinating the rest of the public over age 16 and then reopening the country fully, hopefully by the end of April. But again, all of this depends on the morbidity rate, which is unfortunately expected to rise in the wake of last night's celebrations and the expected rule violations coming over the weekend. Enforcement is set to be a bit more strict over the coming days, however, with actual lockdown restrictions approved by the cabinet. From tonight until Sunday morning, there will be evening curfews starting at 8:30 p.m. All non-essential businesses will be closed during these hours. Gatherings above 10 indoors, 20 outdoors, and with groups outside the nuclear family will also be banned. And the fines for violating lockdowns or even being present in another person's home is 500 shekels. The only exceptions to the lockdown being for majority non-Jewish communities.
שיתוף הפעולה של כולנו מאוד חשוב. לא יכולים לעשות את זה מיטב הרופאים. לא יכולה לעשות את זה הממשלה. לא יכולים לעשות את זה מיטב המומחים ללא שיתוף פעולה של כל הציבור, של כל אחד ואחת מכן. שיהיה לכולנו פורים שמח מאוד, זהיר מאוד ובריא מאוד. תודה.
And now with more on how to celebrate this year's Purim holidays, I'm joined by the founding rabbi at the Tel Aviv International Synagogue, Rabbi Ariel Constantine. Rabbi, it's a pleasure as always to have you. Now, usually it's a mitzvah to drink and party and come together on Purim, but of course it's also a mitzvah to preserve life. So with both of those things in mind, how do you react to last night's parties?
Well, look, I think that people really need to take these holidays more responsibly. The holiday spirit is important, but as you said, life is super important. And the Torah says life comes above all. We can celebrate this holiday and we can do so in a beautiful spirit while still keeping to the restrictions of the Ministry of Health and still keeping public health and safety and protecting one another. So it's unfortunate that people are, in the name of the holiday, in the spirit of the holiday, trying to express themselves in that way. But unfortunately, this year is a little different. And I think people have to realize that we can celebrate the holiday just the same, just in a little bit of a different way.
So is there a message or maybe a lesson from the story of Purim that's especially relevant right now in any way?
Well, what comes to mind is the story of Esther itself. I think we live in a generation that's instant gratification. We want things now. We all want things right now. And the Esther story teaches us that things will be also fine tomorrow. We have a future. We have a optimistic way of looking to the future. And in fact, when Esther was first approaching Achashverosh, and he said, whatever you want, I'll give you half the kingdom. And she said, I'll make a party for you. Okay, I get it. She wants to make a party, loosen him up a little bit, get him a little tipsy, in the right mood. But then he asked her again, what would you like until half the kingdom? And she says, I want to tell you after another party tomorrow. Now that's very risky. She could have lost all of it. Maybe there was a political crisis in the morning, maybe an economic issue. Maybe he'll just have a bad hangover and won't be in the mood. But yet she wanted to demonstrate that there's tomorrow, there's faith, there's always next year. The famous Israeli song, Im lo machar az machrataim, there's always a tomorrow. So while we want it so badly today, and believe me, we're all thirsting to go back to normal, all dying to kind of breathe once again without a mask, without all the restrictions around us. But yet we need to hang in there a little bit longer because there is tomorrow. And tomorrow will come, and Purim next year will come, and we'll celebrate once again with full blast. We just need to hold ourselves and protect the health for now, and celebrate in the way we can this year.
All right, well, so maybe on a more personal note now, how do you suggest that we celebrate this weekend so that we can be safe, but that we can still feel the purpose of the holiday?
So there's a number of things we can do. First of all, we're at the Tel Aviv International Synagogue going to be streaming our reading on YNET and on the Facebook of the Tel Aviv municipality and our own Facebook as well. And Rabbi Amsalem and Rabbi David Starr from Tzohar both said that you can fulfill your mitzvah through watching a live reading online. So I think you could definitely soak in the joy even online. We have a program that you could send out Purim packages, mishloach manot, and gifts to the poor. And you can fulfill your mitzvah by one click at your home. And then we could still bring joy to people. We could still celebrate the essence of the holiday, which is giving, which is loving, which is bringing people together, even from a distance. These mitzvot are meant to bring about Jewish unity, and we can still do that. And we can celebrate with our families. We can have a little l'chaim in our home, with our loved ones in our immediate family. The spirit of Purim will still be there, whether we celebrate it online, send deliveries, and celebrate through Zoom. There's still very much this holiday spirit around us.
Rabbi Constantine, happy holidays. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, and to all the viewers and all the Jewish people, happy Purim.
Thank you. All right, now it's not all bad news and fear tactics with coronavirus today. New reports on the efficacy of vaccines shining a light into the dark.
Roughly 5 million Israelis now protected against coronavirus with at least one of 2 vaccine doses. But health authorities still waiting for another 1.2 million volunteers. And as Israel enters talks to even build vaccine production facilities, there's never been more reason to get the jab. A newly peer-reviewed Israeli study, the first of its kind to analyze large sets of real-world data, showing that the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine is 94% effective in preventing infection, and across all age groups. The results even shocking health authorities.
To some extent, yes, we were surprised because we expected that in the real-world setting, where cold chain is not maintained perfectly and the population is older and sicker, you will not get as good results as you got in the controlled setting of the clinical trials. But we did. Our study has shown very clearly in all age groups, including the very old, and in very different age strata, that the vaccine is as effective in all of them. So if you're older, you should get vaccinated.
So what's the issue? Well, first, it's that a large portion of the population is still completely ineligible for the vaccines, at least for now.
Once there is a safe vaccine for the children population in Israel and all over the world, we can then start to say that we could approach what is called the herd immunity. But that is conditioned on a vaccine that will be used with children.
Then the second problem with the vaccine program being that despite the growing evidence in favor of vaccinations and the lack of evidence of major risks, the country is still battling a strange spike in fake news and anti-vax propaganda. Prime Minister Netanyahu addressing the lies last night.
אומרים לנו החיסון לא טבעי, זה גוף זר, זה תופעות לוואי, זה לא בדוק. אמרו את זה על הבבואות רוח ועל חצבת ועל הדמת. והחיסונים זה הגנה, זה מתנה אדירה לאנושות. אל תאמינו לפייק ניוז, לכו להתחסן.
So how do we know that we can believe the latest study in that the new coronavirus vaccines are roughly 94% effective in preventing infection? Joining us to discuss from Harvard Medical School and the Boston Children's Hospital is Director of the Predictive Medicine Group, Dr. Ben Race. Dr. Race, thanks for being with us. Now, you participated as a researcher in this study. What was most surprising to you about these results?
It's great to be here, Aaron. Thanks for having me on. The most surprising thing about this study is actually that it confirmed everything we saw in the pre-market clinical trials. Pfizer published a study in December, a few months ago, just around the time that this was approved, based on 20,000 individuals, and it showed a pretty high effectiveness for this vaccine. We were lucky enough to be able to replicate that study in an observational design here in Israel with 600,000 vaccinated individuals. That's 30 times as large. And the most surprising thing was that even though it was done in a real-world setting with all of the complications and logistics inherent to that setting, it was still a very good vaccine effectiveness that was measured from this study.
So how big of a sample do you actually need to consider the data reliable?
So it's a great question. The 20,000 people that were involved in the first study definitely were reliable. They provided reliable results. But it depends what question you're asking. Because we had 600,000 vaccinated individuals in this study, we were able to ask much more detailed and high-resolution questions. For example, we were able to analyze the vaccine effectiveness for different age groups and also looking at people with different amounts of comorbidities, in other words, other diseases that they have. We found in this study that the vaccine was effective across all age groups in a consistent fashion, including elderly above the age of 70. And we also found initial indications that people with greater amounts of comorbidities, other illnesses, may have a slightly less high vaccine effectiveness, although overall it's still pretty high. That last result, I have to say, did not achieve the same amount of statistical significance as the age one.
So did you find any risks or dangers associated with the vaccine?
So this study was focused on vaccine effectiveness, not vaccine safety. So we don't make any statements in this study about vaccine safety.
All right, so what inferences can we extrapolate from the data that you collected?
That's a great question. So one of the main findings was that in the original Pfizer study, because they only had 20,000 people, they were able to measure pretty accurately the effectiveness of the vaccine for symptomatic illness. What they were not able to measure as accurately was the effectiveness of the vaccine for severe illness. And due to the sample size that we had here, we were able to do that. And we found that it is very effective for both of those. Another interesting aspect is that when this study was being conducted, in Israel, the B117 variant, commonly known as the UK or British variant, so the B117 variant of the virus became gradually the predominant strain or variant in Israel. And by the end of the study, estimates are that it was about 80% of all new infections. And so as a result of that, one conclusion that can be drawn from this study is that the vaccine is very effective against the UK or B117 variant.
All right, well, you're leaving us with some really great news, great sounding news, some things to definitely look forward to. Dr. Race, again, thank you so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
In other news, thanks to Israel's speedy vaccination campaign, vaccinated people now enjoying gyms, bars, hotels, and even concerts. Another clear reason to go and get vaccinated. Alyssa Hugel with the details.
Much buzz in the air amid signs that normalcy is returning. Israel lifting coronavirus lockdown restrictions this week for some through its green passport system. The government announcing that gyms, hotels, cinemas, and swimming pools can all reopen to Israelis carrying a so-called green passport. The green passport obtained from an app given to Israelis 1 week after their second and final jab, and it's valid for 6 months. For the first time in a year, vaccinated people enjoying an open-air concert in Tel Aviv on Wednesday. The concert marking one of the first in a program to restart cultural events.
Wow, this is so exciting. We are really so happy to be here today. it's unbelievable. After 1 year of staying at home, it's great to be out, to see a show, some culture. We're so happy, right? Yes, of course.
All attendees eagerly waiting online and showing their green passports for scanning. Additionally, all events continuing to follow health regulations, requiring visitors to wear masks and keep their distance. Health officials hoping that the green passport system will act as an incentive for vaccine skeptics.
Now, the news from along the coast slipping further from bad to worse every day. The massive Mediterranean oil spill polluting the water and killing off wildlife, and now it's hitting the economy. Israel's health ministry on Wednesday announcing a ban on the sale of any and all seafood. And the ban lasting indefinitely until the ministry runs a retraction, including on fish and any other marine life sold for consumption, effectively immediately. And that said, there is not yet direct evidence of any risk or danger related to eating fish. The government is simply now checking samples for any real contaminants, after which an updated ruling will be issued. What is absolutely in danger is the shoreline itself. Over 160 kilometers or 90% of the coast now covered in black tar. And the Environmental Protection Ministry is again issuing a call for all hands on deck, complete with a color-coded map of the damages to the shoreline, where citizens are encouraged to simply arrive at the beaches any day between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. to help. After 4 years of severed relations with Palestinian leadership, the Biden administration is cautiously moving back towards re-engaging with the Palestinians. On Tuesday, the White House returning to embracing the so-called two-state solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And this following a phone call between Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Israeli Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi, in which Blinken emphasizing the new administration's belief that a two-state solution is the best way to ensure Israel's future as a Jewish democratic state. But Israelis are experiencing deja vu of the daylight between Jerusalem and D.C. developed by the Obama administration. This as 6 progressive Jewish groups in the United States now calling on the new White House to revoke a directive from the Trump administration requiring all United States exports from West Bank settlements to be labeled as made in Israel. The groups claiming that such a policy is harmful to essential interests of both Israelis and Palestinians, while calling on Homeland Security to implement a new policy. As of today, though, neither the State Department nor the Department of Homeland Security have responded to the petition. In other news, the secretive Dimona nuclear facility at the heart of Israel's Negev desert is apparently receiving some upgrades. The Associated Press revealing satellite imagery and reporting what looks to be massive construction projects with unknown intentions. Joining me with more is Dr. Ephraim Inbar, president of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. Now, Professor, first of all, Israel has never confirmed nor denied its nuclear capabilities, but it's widely accepted that Israel is the world's 9th nuclear-armed power. And with this latest report, many are calling on Israel to so-called come clean about our activities. How do you respond?
I don't understand the rationale of such a call. Is a country supposed to tell its military secrets to the world? You know, I don't expect transparency in military affairs. Every country has a right to keep certain things secret particularly from its enemies. After all, we do not live in Scandinavia or in other parts of the world that are very peaceful. We have real enemies around us, and we are entitled to keep our secrets.
Well, so there are those who believe that the site must either be decommissioned or retrofitted to actually address safety concerns. What do you think is being done there?
Well, first of all, it's quite clear that this is an old reactor. It was built at the end of the 50s, and reactors of this age are usually decommissioned or retrofitted. It seems to me that part of the works, we don't know exactly the purpose, are intended to retrofit this strategic installation of Israel.
Well, many claim that Israel is actually being duplicitous with the program and that Israel is actually pointing fingers at Iran's program just to avert the eyes away from our own. Is there truth to this?
Definitely not. We have not violated any agreement. We are not part of the non-proliferation treaty because we believe it's not effective, and Iran is the right example for it. Unlike Iran, Israel has never threatened any country with destruction. So I think the comparison is totally unacceptable. Israel is a peaceful country, and like other countries, we are entitled to prepare ourselves for war.
All right, so I think maybe my final question, how do you think Israel really should be responding to all of these criticisms? Is it fair for the world to look at Dimona the way that they are?
Well, we know that Israel is not always treated fairly in the international community. There are other countries, similar to our status. India is also not part of the non-proliferation treaty. So is Pakistan, and we are not satisfied with the conditions of this treaty, particularly the inspections. We've seen in Iran that the inspections are not reliable, and they can be cover-ups, as we have found out after we sneaked away the nuclear archive from Iran. So this is not an acceptable measure for preventing nuclear proliferation in the world.
All right, Dr. Efraim Bar, thank you so much for your insights.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on now. Investment channel Smart Funding knows just how to make the right choices for you, especially during a coronavirus economy. In 2020, investments worth billions of dollars were placed into Israeli startup companies, and this is actually a large increase compared to 2019. Hannah Rifkin with the story.
The COVID-19 pandemic has put world economies on pause, activity in entire sectors shutting down instantly, while others slowing significantly. But interestingly enough, those wanting to invest during this challenging period looking to private companies on the verge of their breakthrough, gaining momentum.
Well, for the past year, we see a clear trend. More and more experienced investors extract their investments out of markets such as real estate or tourism and invest in private startup companies.
Smart Funding, finding and representing groundbreaking, up-and-coming Israeli startups in their research and development stages, making them reliable during the uncertainty of the pandemic economy. And each company selected by Smart Funding is thoughtful.
One of the principles that guide us is that it is smart for your portfolio and it's also smart for humanity. We make sure to work with companies that will not only succeed in business, but will also contribute to humanity and the planet.
Companies must also pass an array of screening and testing processes put in place for reducing investment risk and increasing chances of success. Some Israeli companies represented by Smart Funding, including Ella Pharma, which is developing necrosis treatments, food tech company Solvit, which finds functional and nutritional solutions for food, and Thomas Medical, which is now expanding its patent applications. Exclusive news and updates about opportunities in Israel are frequently provided to Smart Funding's international investor community. To learn more and join the community, visit www.smartfunding.co.il.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast with Hannah Rifkin.
All right, going into Purim weekend with partly cloudy to clear skies throughout the weekend and starting with tonight. Israel is calling for lows averaging 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow's highs expecting to hit an average of 73 degrees Fahrenheit or 29 degrees Celsius. And Saturday's highs reaching approximately 74 degrees Fahrenheit or 23 degrees Celsius.
Now, before we go, of course, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. It's kind of an oldie but a goodie. Oh, nice. This is, I think, one of the best Purim costumes I've ever seen. It's very creative, but they're not socially distanced. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.26 shekels to the American dollar and 2.62 shekels to the Canadian dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to visit the all-new and improved ILTV website at iltv.tv and subscribe to our newsletter for the latest updates while you're there. I'm Aaron Porras. Stay healthy, happy holidays, and thank you so much for watching.